97-year-old man orders food in a simple restaurant, and what happened will move you. John enters the restaurant with slow steps, revealing a life marked by challenges and exclusion. His modest appearance and tired look tell, without words, the story of a man who fought against loneliness and indifference, seeking dignity in a simple gesture that turns into a request for food. In the discreet environment of the restaurant, John's request triggers a series of unexpected events. The merciless gaze of some contrasts with the determination he carries, until a firm and sensitive presence emerges to intervene and challenge prejudice, connecting destinies in surprising ways. This intervention opens a path to encounters that mix pain, compassion, and the promise of redemption, awakening curiosity about how small actions can transform lives. Get ready to follow this journey full of moments of overcoming and reunions that challenge the rigidity of the past. The story unfolds in encounters marked by forgiveness and the search for hope, without yet revealing how the destinies of these characters will intertwine. Stay tuned to find out what happens next and be moved by each step of this inspiring journey. John, an elderly man of 97 years old, enters the restaurant with slow and hesitant steps. His aged figure reveals signs of a difficult existence, marked by the constant struggle against loneliness and the indifference of the world. The worn-out clothes and tired eyes silently tell the story of someone who faced many challenges and found themselves excluded from the opportunities that life could offer. The simple atmosphere of the restaurant, with modest tables and simple decor, contrasts with the weight that John carries on his face, the result of years of suffering and marginalization. Upon entering, John feels the cold that has accompanied him since the days when hope vanished from his soul. Each step, even with the fragility of his body, reflects the determination of someone who does not give up, even in the face of adversity. The murmur of those present and the soft sound of utensils create an atmosphere of normality, but for him, every glance that goes unnoticed or every sigh of absent compassion reinforces the feeling of isolation. The restaurant, which for others is just a place to eat, turns into a stage where the harsh reality of their journey is revealed. As John approaches the counter, time seems to slow down, allowing the details of his journey to unfold in silence. The features of his skin and the careful gestures when supporting himself demonstrate the resistance of a man who survived so many adverse events. With each look given by other customers, he remembers the moments of rejection and neglect, but he also carries a spark of dignity that drives him to continue. At that moment, the restaurant becomes a temporary refuge, where the scars of the past mix with the hope that, even in the simplicity of a plate of food, there can be a minimum of recognition and respect. John approaches the counter with slow, careful steps. His eyes, although marked by fatigue, carry a silent determination as he stands in front of the attendant. The air in the restaurant seems to grow thicker, as if each breath carries the story of years of deprivation and loneliness. At that moment, his need becomes evident when he asks for a plate of food, a simple gesture that reveals the entire complexity of his existence. When making the request, John demonstrates a vulnerability that contrasts with the dignity he still preserves. His gestures are slow but firm, and the look that rests briefly on the others present carries a mixture of resignation and hope. His every movement reflects the years of fighting to survive, of battles fought in silence, where hunger and abandonment left deep marks on his soul. The simple act of requesting food becomes a symbol of the resistance of a man who, despite adversity, maintains his integrity. The surrounding environment transforms into a scene of subtle revelations, where John's request echoes as a call for recognition and care. As he waits, the seconds seem to carry the weight of his memories and the difficulties he faced throughout his life. The restaurant, with its modest atmosphere, becomes the stage where vulnerability meets dignity. There, the simple gesture of ordering a plate of food is more than a physical need, is a silent expression of the courage and worth of a man who refuses to be forgotten. Margaret, the owner of the restaurant, fixes her gaze on John with a coldness that contrasts with the modesty of the environment. She observes the elderly man with a look of disapproval, as if his presence disturbs the order and image she wants to preserve in the establishment. The contempt in his attitude does not go unnoticed, symbolizing the relentless judgment that society imposes on those who live on the margins. Margaret's posture is marked by abrupt gestures and an indifference that hurts John's spirit, reinforcing the feeling of exclusion that he has carried for so many years. Their movements reveal a deep-rooted conviction that misery has no place in their environment, transforming the simple act of serving a meal into a silent demonstration of prejudice. The way she handles John's request echoes the harshness with which the world treats the helpless. In the silence that settles after the interaction, The restaurant seems to reflect the tension created by Lourdes' attitude. The gazes of others present disperse, while the environment maintains an aura of judgment, revealing the rigidity of values that condemn vulnerability. Thus, Lourdes' disdain not only intensifies John's isolation, but also illustrates the stark reality of a social system that prefers to ignore those in need. Emily, who moves with natural elegance through the restaurant environment, carefully observes the scene that unfolds before her. Her eyes fix on John, whose vulnerability and dignity contrast with the cold treatment she receives, awakening in her a feeling of silent revolt. Upon witnessing Lourdes' indifference and merciless judgment, his thoughts are filled with restlessness, while injustice is clearly and painfully revealed in his eyes. Emily's influence, both on society and on her own environment, is felt in the way she absorbs every detail of the situation. The perception of John's suffering makes her intensely connect with her feelings of compassion and rejection of prejudice. This internal awakening drives a subtle change in her posture, transforming silence into a determination to act, as if the observed injustice called on her to intervene and restore dignity. The moment marks the beginning of the central conflict, when Emily's conscience prevails in the face of harsh reality. She understands that the environment has become the scene of an imbalance that needs to be corrected, and this perception incites an internal reaction that drives her to act in defense of the helpless. Thus, Emily's sensitivity becomes strength, outlining the outline of a transformation that promises to alter the dynamics of that space and, who knows, rescue a little humanity in everyday life. Emily approaches the counter with determination, and with a resolute gesture, decides to assume the cost of John's meal. It seeks to restore the dignity of the elderly and demonstrate that no one should be treated with disdain, especially in a space that should be welcoming. His action does not go unnoticed by other customers, and the environment, previously permeated with indifference, now reflects an atmosphere of solidarity and respect. When positioning herself in front of Lourdes, Emily confronts the owner with a firm stance and without hesitation. His eyes express the conviction that respect for humanity must prevail over merciless judgment. This intervention is not only an act of generosity, but also a silent manifesto against exclusion and the rigidity of values that condemn those in need. Emily's attitude transforms the restaurant's atmosphere, spreading a wave of empathy among those present. His decision to support John and challenge Lourdes' cold stance establishes a new pattern of behavior, where compassion overrides prejudice. Thus, Emily's intervention becomes the catalyst for a change that little by little promises to rescue humanity and solidarity in that space, strengthening hope for better days. While Emily dedicates herself to providing support to John, her eyes rest on a peculiar watch that adorns the elderly man's wrist. This object, with its unique design and worn finish, awakens in her a series of deep memories, marked by losses that have never been forgotten. The clock, apparently common to the others, carries on its surface the traces of a story full of pain and longing, which slowly returns to the surface in Emily's mind. When looking at the accessory, Emily feels an intense connection with her most hidden feelings. The object seems to evoke the memory of someone who once occupied a significant space in your life, bringing up images of happy moments that mix with the sadness of goodbye. The presence of the clock reveals an invisible link with the past, reminding her of the ties that were lost over time and the promises that remained unfulfilled. With a heavy heart, Emily contemplates the watch as a reliquary of emotions and stories that never stopped pulsating in her being. The sight of the object reinforces the perception that the loss left indelible marks on her existence and encourages her to reflect on the fragility of human relationships. At that moment, the watch becomes a symbol of lasting memories and a past that, despite being painful, continues to shape the direction of the present and define the essence of each choice made throughout life. Emily tilts her head, bringing the watch closer to her eyes as she tries to understand the story behind that object. She asks John in a soft voice about the origin of the accessory, which immediately awakens memories and tears in the elderly man's eyes. John, with a nostalgic look, reveals that the watch was a gift from James, his son, a man who carried hope and tenderness in his heart, and who now lives only in the memory of those who loved him. Upon hearing John's story, Emily feels the weight of a past that is intertwined with the present. She remembers clearly the moment she shared with James, an old love whose life ended tragically. The story of John and the clock, with its simple design and timestamps, transforms the conversation into an emotional bridge between the two, revealing a deep connection between loss and the persistence of memory. Have you ever experienced something that changed your life with a simple gesture? Share your experience in the comments and connect with this story of overcoming that shows how forgiveness can transform pain into hope. The atmosphere in the restaurant becomes charged with emotion as the distant sound of utensils and murmurs mixes with the revelation of a story of love and pain. John's narrative about James opens space for Emily to relive her deepest feelings and at the same time recognize the responsibility of honoring the memory of the one she loved so much. The clock comes to symbolize not only the passage of time, but also the opportunity to rescue the lessons of the past and transform pain into a drive for redemption and personal renewal. The revelation of the bond with James brings to the surface a wave of emotion that unites the destinies of Emily and John. John's story, full of longing and pain, intensifies their inner conflict, revealing the deep bonds that loss can create between people marked by the same suffering. The environment, previously calm and indifferent, now vibrates with a tension felt in the looks and silences full of meaning. While the past is intensely projected onto the present, John begins his stories about James with a choked voice, each word loaded with memories that seem to transcend time. He describes in detail his son's vibrant youth, the moments of joy and the small, big victories that marked the trajectory of a man who sought to be recognized and loved. Emily, attentive and sensitive, absorbs each narrative with a look that mixes empathy and pain, finding in John's story a reflection of her own feelings of loss and unfinished love. As the stories unfold, the two find themselves connected by a network of memories and emotions that transcends the barriers of time. The conversation turns into a space for sharing and understanding, where the details of James's experiences serve to emphasize the importance of affection and memory. The environment becomes the stage for reconciliation between past and present, demonstrating that shared pain can be the starting point for a new journey of healing and renewal. The tension in the restaurant increases noticeably when Lords' anger intensifies. His gaze becomes sharp and his gestures, abrupt, reveal a growing fury at what he is witnessing. The previously moderate environment becomes a stage for conflict, while customers withdraw, apprehensive in the face of an atmosphere full of indignation and hostility. Driven by her feelings and the injustice she witnesses, Emily begins to vehemently defend John. With a heavy heart and a firm voice, she expresses her intention to protect the elderly person at any cost, raising the tone of her intervention. The atmosphere becomes increasingly charged, and Emily's determination to ensure respect for John is expressed in a clear threat to call the police, demonstrating that she will no longer accept disdain and discrimination. The scene becomes even more complicated with the increase in tension and Lords' accusing look, which intensifies the confrontation. The restaurant is filled with an uncomfortable silence, where the weight of the accusations and Emily's promise of action create a scenario of inevitable change. Emily's stance, now taken by an overwhelming emotion, calls Lords' authority into question, transforming that space into a battlefield where dignity and respect become issues to be decided at that exact moment. A customer, who was sitting near the counter, interrupts the escalation of the conflict with a conciliatory attitude. With a calm voice and moderate gestures, he appeals to reason and understanding, asking everyone to calm down and remember the importance of mutual respect. Your intervention transforms the accumulated tension into a more serene environment, creating the opportunity for those involved to resume dialogue peacefully. The calm that settles in allows Emily and John to move away from the hustle and bustle of the counter and head to a discreet table. There, they sit down and begin to eat lunch together, sharing the space with a silence that carries both the weight of past experiences and the hope of reconciliation. The meal becomes a moment of pause, where the food serves as comfort and the peaceful environment helps to soften the marks of recent tension. During lunch, the discovery of the watch awakens painful memories and old wounds in both of them. The object, which remains on John's wrist, brings back intense memories of the loss of James, causing his feelings to be acutely renewed. This moment appears as the height of emotion, leading them to openly confront the pain that unites them and to recognize that, despite the suffering, James's memory is a link that transcends time. Emily, with a look full of emotion, begins the narrative of how she met James, describing in detail the charm that the young man aroused and the way in which his presence brightened her days. She recalls the brief but intense encounters that revealed the tenderness and energy of the one who had marked her life indelibly. His words carry the weight of longing and the brightness of gratitude for having lived moments that will never be erased in his memory. John complements the narrative with reports about James's trajectory, remembering the gestures, achievements, and dreams he had. Their reports, punctuated by a tone of pain and pride, harmonize with Emily's memories, forming a symphony of memories that rescues the spirit of a son who, although absent, remains alive in the hearts of those who loved him. Thus, both find in sharing their stories a way to honor James, transforming the pain of loss into a sincere and comforting tribute. While the conversation was going on calmly and emotionally, Anne, Aramis's wife, appears in the room with an imposing presence and a look full of pain, interrupting the calm that had settled in after lunch. She takes a firm stance, and her voice carries the weight of years of suffering, as she accuses Emily of having contributed to the distance in the family and to the pain that everyone carries. Anne reveals that she always knew about the involvement between James and Emily, and that the young man even stated that he would leave the life he knew to build a future with Emily, which further aggravated the emotional shock that permeates the environment. If this story is touching your heart, leave a like to show that you believe in the power of empathy and change. Anne's revelation throws a new layer of tension into the situation, dividing the feelings of those present and resurrecting wounds from the past that seemed to be healed. The accusation, full of hurt, echoes in the restaurant, causing eyes to focus on Emily, who now finds herself confronted with Anne's anger and suffering. The atmosphere becomes heavy, and the traces of disgust and disbelief on Anne's face reveal the conviction that Emily's actions contributed to the family breakdown and the abandonment of the promises made by James. The impact of Anne's words makes the atmosphere even more charged, demanding a response that is not limited to just justifications. The intensity of the emotional confrontation forces everyone to relive painful memories and moments of betrayal, creating a scenario in which the past and present inevitably collide. At that moment, the story deepens into an abyss of feelings, where truth mixes with heartache, and the fates of John, Anne, and Emily seem to lean toward an uncertain outcome, marked by the need to understand and perhaps overcome the mistakes that shaped their paths. Emily turns pale at Anne's presence. Her heart races and the words disappear amidst the emotion. Emily's eyes fill with tears, revealing the intensity of what she feels, and she stands up with an uncontrollable impulse, approaching Anne and wrapping her in a tight hug. At that moment, the barriers break down and the environment transforms into a space of vulnerability and compassion, where the silence is interrupted only by the sobs that reflect the accumulated pain. The scene becomes a milestone in the trajectory of those present, when Anne, overcome by emotion, allows Emily's defense to become a gesture of reconciliation. The tight hug that unites the two women symbolizes the opening to healing, converting years of resentment into tears that wash away the wounds of the past. The intensity of this moment causes John to stand up too, coming closer to share the warmth of the embrace, uniting family ties and reopening paths to redemption. From this collective gesture, a new arc of transformation begins, where John and Anne begin to see Emily's intervention as an opportunity to overcome mistakes and seek a cure. The shared hug represents the renunciation of the rigidity of old pains and the acceptance of a future based on empathy and forgiveness. This moment, full of emotion, marks the beginning of a new stage in everyone's lives, where union and reconciliation make room for hope for better days. From that day on, Emily's presence became indispensable in Anne and John's lives. With each meeting, the three grew closer, sharing stories and rebuilding the trust that time had eroded. The bond formed overcame any resentment from the past and made room for a new chapter filled with affection and mutual care. Daily coexistence became a balm for old wounds. The conversations went on for long periods, where memories of James and the pain of loss were shared, processed, and, little by little, welcomed with the tenderness that Emily offered. It was clear that she had filled a void that had long remained insurmountable in the relationship between Anne and John. Little by little, the family atmosphere acquired a new light. On quiet afternoons, the three would get together to prepare simple and tasty meals, in a routine that strengthened the feeling of belonging and unconditional support. The small daily joys multiplied, revealing that Emily's presence brought the peace and harmony that were missing in their lives. The affection that developed was capable of alleviating the traumas and anxieties of the past. Anne and John began to see in Emily not just a friend, but a true daughter whose influence transformed the environment into a welcoming home full of hope. The gesture of care and daily dedication demonstrated that forgiveness and love could heal the deepest emotional scars. Continuing this new path, the reinvented family became an example of redemption and resilience. The union of the three transcended pain and created a lasting bond, where each day was celebrated as a victory over the past. Thus, Emily remained a beacon of light in Anne and John's lives, guiding them to a future where compassion and understanding were the true pillars of happiness. Some time passed and life took its course. Emily, whose presence transformed the existence of Anne and John, found a new love on her path that rekindled her shine and renewed her hopes. This new relationship brought with it a light and vibrant energy, which spread in every gesture and look, demonstrating that even after so much pain it is possible to find happiness. The family environment, which had already gone through moments of intense reconciliation, welcomed this news with enthusiasm and tenderness. Anne and John, who had become pillars in Emily's life, rejoiced in seeing her blossom into a healthy relationship. This change marked the beginning of a new phase, where the painful past gave way to renewed feelings and a promising future. On Emily's wedding day, the atmosphere was filled with excitement and celebration. The ceremony, held in a space full of meaning for everyone, was carefully prepared to reflect the transformation that each person had experienced. The setting combined simplicity and elegance, symbolizing the union of souls who, despite the scars, learned to value the beauty of life and forgiveness. Anne and John played a prominent role on that special day, being honored as essential figures in Emily's trajectory. With looks full of pride and gratitude, they received applause and hugs from those present, representing the strength of love that transcends the barriers of time and adversity. The active participation of both in the ceremony reinforced the idea that the family can be built on empathy and understanding. Emily's wedding celebration symbolized not only the union of two hearts, but also the triumph of redemption and resilience. Amidst laughter, tears, and sincere wishes, the event marked a new chapter for everyone involved. Anne and John, with their unconditional support, became recognized as fundamental elements in the healing journey and in building a future filled with love and hope. After so many challenges, the three learned that forgiving and reconciling were not just gestures of generosity, but true medicine for the wounds of the soul. Emily, Anne, and John discovered that, by embracing their pain and sharing their feelings, the environment transformed into a place where hope flourished again. Each encounter became an opportunity to leave behind the weight of grief and embrace the potential of a new beginning. In long conversations around the table, they shared stories of loss and reunion, and between laughter and tears they felt the barriers of the past crumble. The silences that previously carried the sound of pain were replaced by the welcoming sound of voices that understood and supported each other. In the simplicity of shared moments, life gained colors and the feeling of belonging strengthened. On an autumn afternoon, while the soft sunlight streamed through the windows of the house where they met, Anne prepared tea while John told old stories that somehow made time seem less cruel. Emily listened with an open heart, absorbing every word, and in that serene environment, the wounds of the past seemed to find space to heal. In gestures such as a complicit look or a tight hug, the trio built a support network that transformed pain into an impulse to move forward. Painful memories of irreparable losses were acknowledged, but also received the warmth of understanding, allowing each to find a path to inner peace. Every day the bonds grew closer, revealing the strength that emerges when one chooses empathy. The sun was leaving on an orange horizon, sealing the meeting of those who transformed their lives with the power of forgiveness. Anne, John, and Emily, united by the bonds of affection and understanding, celebrated each small victory that guided them towards a more serene future. The painful memories were replaced by sincere smiles, showing that, even after so many losses, hope can be reborn. The environment that once carried the weight of grief was now illuminated with the peace that only reconciliation can bring. In each gesture of affection, each tight hug, the three reaffirmed the strength of their love and the courage to reinvent themselves. This new routine, full of simple and meaningful moments, revealed that the past, however dark it was, no longer prevented the construction of a tomorrow full of possibilities. In conversations around the table, the stories shared took on new contours, giving a new meaning to the pain and transforming it into learning. The laughter and lightness that emerged between them was proof that wounds can heal when nourished by gestures of empathy and solidarity. Each word exchanged demonstrated the importance of looking within and allowing the heart to open to renewal. As the days went by, the meetings became silent celebrations of overcoming and inner strength. The human warmth that filled each environment strengthened bonds and showed that, even in the midst of scars, it is possible to find a path to happiness. Stories from the past were integrated into new memories, where compassion was present and hope became constant. At the end of a peaceful afternoon, when the sky was colored with soft tones, Anne, John, and Emily looked at each other with gratitude and complicity. They felt that the journey, full of challenges and learning, had led them to a new beginning, where personal renewal was celebrated with each dawn. And so, With light hearts and full of love, they moved forward, certain that forgiveness and reconciliation transform life into a continuous opportunity to start over. Along this journey, John faced contempt and loneliness, while Emily emerged as a transformative presence, connecting destinies and awakening hope in the midst of pain. Anne, who carried years of hurt, found in compassion and the strength of a hug the opportunity to forgive and reconnect forgotten ties. Between meetings that awakened memories and unexpected twists, the three discovered that forgiveness can transform grief into a new beginning, showing that personal renewal is born from love, empathy, and the courage to face the past. Thank you for following this exciting journey to the end. If this story touched your heart and awakened in you the desire to see more stories of overcoming, enjoy the final screen that is appearing now. Click to like the channel and stay up to date with these narratives that inspire and transform lives. In a moment, you will see a recommended video option with other impactful stories, as well as a collection of videos with similar stories so you can continue to be moved and learn from each experience. Stay connected and discover more stories that warm your heart and encourage you to move forward. Your journey of inspiration has just begun and new narratives await you.